Still got the Gordie Howe Bridge up.
I think it's still there. It hasn't been bombed. I wonder why Trump hasn't tried to destroy it, since he's not going to make any money off it. I don't think Canada is going to capitulate to extortion attempts, and nor should we.
Today we're going to look at the fiasco over the Gordie Howe Bridge, and the fact that Trump can be bribed. For those,
no, he
for those
can't
that,
be bribed.
For those that don't know, the Gordie Howe Bridge is the new bridge between Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. It was in the planning stage for more than a dozen years. There was international agreements and contracts. The bridge was finally completed a month ago. People were starting to plan grand opening ceremonies. Excuse me, my allergies are killing me. And the Trump stepped in because Moran, who owns the Ambassador Bridge, which is pretty much fallen apart, it's an older bridge, gave $1 million to Trump, and Trump then yanked the approval of the Gordie Howe Bridge. And you may wonder, how can he do that? Well, at both ends of the bridge, obviously, there's customs, and
Right.
you need to put customs officers into those buildings, and so Trump yanked the customs officers and therefore closed the bridge. Now you may be wondering,
agents? That ICE agents?
Yeah, they're probably there too, but you may be wondering why they call it the Gordie Howe Bridge. Gordie Howe, for those who didn't follow hockey, was a great hockey player that played for the Red Wings, and everybody believed that that's a decent name that you can call a bridge that was bought and paid for, built by Canada. So they paid tribute to a great hockey player just to try to appease everybody on both sides of the border.
They must have had a crystal ball saying that we'd have to have our elbows up. Gordie Howe was known for having his elbows up in hockey, so he had to play against some of the greatest hockey players Canada ever produced. So,
well, his idea of a hat trick was a goal, an assist, and a fight.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. Well, I think we have a goal, an assist, and a fight going on over the Gordie Howe Bridge. It's an appropriate name for him, I think. And there's some other issues with this bridge thing that I don't know why we're allowing such a pedophile president backed by a terrorist Republican Party to shut down a bridge that Canada paid to increase business and ease of access for U.S. businesses into Canada and vice versa, Canada businesses into the U.S. It's an economic advantage to have that bridge open. So why are we allowing the extortion by a president of the United States that is total bogus BS? And I think it's time for Canada to put the elbows up. What are some of the ways that we could flex our muscle and show that we're not going to be bullied by a person that should be releasing the Epstein files and showing his name covered all over the documents for the world to see his involvement with his best buddy Epstein? What can we do you think, to draw attention to that? I mean, I would say, well, guess what, Trump? We're shutting down the Ambassador Bridge because it's old and feeble, and we're just shutting it down, and we're not reopening it until the Epstein files are unredacted and released according to your own laws. And that would be what I would do. Bang. How are you going to respond to that, Trump? You going to invade us? Bring it on. And there are other measures that Canada could take. Like, what about this truck convoy that went to Ottawa to terrorize Ottawa over trade agreements and what have you? Can't they block the Ambassador Bridge, saying that, they want the other bridge open so their trucking buddies could make more money and pay less tolls? I mean, wouldn't that be a proper truck convoy from Alberta? Go down there. They blocked the Coutts border for less, and they cost, hundreds of millions of dollars in trade losses while they blocked the Coutts border. Why couldn't they block the Ambassador Bridge until the Gordie Howe Bridge was opened by the U.S.? What's the
Waste of
deal?
time. Waste of time. What what
Well,
what you look at is, what do the Americans care most about? And they care more about their gas dollar at the pump than they care about anything else. They don't care who in the world they have to bomb or murder or kill or give weapons to in order to continue to keep the gas prices at the pump low. In
so
2023,
are you suggesting something?
well, in 2023, 97% of the oil imports from, by America came from Canada. So
Oh,
97%. Now the wells, the storage wells in the U.S. are dry,
yeah,
and they've used up a lot of their they have a contingency
reserve.
reserve. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've used that up. So what you do is you start faking shutting down pipelines for repairs. So you say, well, geez,
Well, hey.
we got, we send over 3 million barrels a day. Well, we got to shut down this one line because we got to do some repairs. So we're only going to send you 2 million. And and and
I love
before
it. I
and
love
before
it.
and before you do that, you buy into a bunch of oil share futures.
Oh no, no,
So
we'd go to jail. That we're not
ah,
the
ah,
U.S. citizens. We'd all go to jail if we did that.
no, I'm
You
saying
know.
Canada should do that. Buy into oil futures and start turning the tap off. And then after the second week, say, geez, we have another minor failure here at a pumping station. We're going to
Yeah.
cut off another 500,000 barrels a day. And the thing about the oil is, if it stays in the ground, it stays valuable. It's a
Right.
declining resource.
Right.
Whereas if you shut off a bridge and you shut down a whole bunch of cross-border trade and food and car parts and that sort of thing, it hurts the consumer here and the workers here more than it hurts the Americans.
Well, it
So
would
the
also
oil,
benefit us if we shorted the stock and did stock market changes.
now,
If
but
we
the
did
trouble
those
is,
changes, we would make huge profits and compensate. We'd make more money doing that than we do off the sale of our discounted oil to the U.S. So I
well,
think it would
just
be a fair trade.
but let's look at that. Say you wanted to short a stock, you'd
Yeah.
have to short the stock in the company. You'd have to put a put order in or a buy order or whatever, and then you'd have to watch it and put in a sell order, and you have to do all this rigmarole. Whereas if you bought oil futures, so you buy the oil futures at $80 a barrel, and then Canada cuts off the 97% of the supply to the U.S. A barrel of oil now will all of a sudden be 300 or 400 bucks, and then you dump it when it goes up before you turn the tap back on.
Well, yeah. I mean,
It's simple.
well, I think that's what, strong negotiations should do is, use the same tactics of business that Trump claims to be such a great businessman. Why don't we just use those tactics in dealing with the Gordie Howe Bridge? It's time to, it's nice to have our elbows up, but like Gordie Howe like to do, throw the gloves on the ice and start duking it out with the U.S. And I think that's what we need to do. Um, I like your idea of turning the oil taps off. We can make nothing but money by that maneuver. And like you said, those pipelines, the environmentalists would enjoy ensuring that the safety requirements and inspections of the pipeline are up to date. And that's something we need to do responsibly as a country anyway. So it's not unwarranted, that's for sure. What
So
other things do you think we could do? Maybe we should demand that, like Trump wanted part ownership of the bridge, maybe we should demand that we own half the Ambassador Bridge before any other bridges opened up. I mean, there's tolls go across there, and that bridge is getting old. We got to make sure its safety requirements are in place, and best way of doing that is maybe Canada should own the Ambassador Bridge. We don't get money from that, as far as I'm aware, from the tolls for shipping to and from the U.S. So maybe it's time we demanded our fair share off the Ambassador Bridge.
I you don't want your share of the Ambassador Bridge.
No.
It's rickety. It's rickety, and unfortunately, it's the number one crossing in North America to the U.S. So the amount of goods that go over that bridge every day is phenomenal. But
I
I was
heard
listening
that
to the,
they're slowing down. One article said the amount of traffic slowed down, and their truckers and trucking firms in Canada are rerouting their trucks up to Sarnia to cross there. It's cheaper to pay the extra trucking costs than to use the Ambassador Bridge. So, I mean, we have alternatives if we were to shut down the Ambassador Bridge for all traffic. They have the tunnel and they have Sarnia, and it would force pressure on the U.S. government to open up the Gordie Howe Bridge. And like you said, you would know, you go across that Ambassador Bridge once in a while, and if it's in bad state of repairs, it should be inspected for sure and shut down until it passes an inspection. So, off with the gloves there, Carney.
one of the problems with the tunnel is you can't drive trucks through the tunnel, big trucks, and you can't take things that are going to explode like propane or gasoline or anything like that. So that the tunnel couldn't pick up the slack from the bridge.
Well, the Sarnia Bridge could, though. We could always have the federal government subsidize truckers to spend a little bit more time, go up to Sarnia and down versus going across the Ambassador Bridge. I mean, it's the will of the people. I mean, if that truck convoy can harass Ottawa for weeks on end, why can't they harass the Ambassador Bridge and block traffic going across? It's their buddies with the big trucks that are, affected having to pay higher tolls at the Ambassador Bridge than they would be paying on the Gordie Howe Bridge. So it should be something that the truck convoy lobbyists should actually be doing versus harassing civilians with noisy trucks on the streets of Ottawa. So this would be a legitimate reason to use your big trucks to block roadways.
They tried it, and the mayor of Windsor is a little more, or was a little more authoritative than the mayor of Ottawa was at the time. I understand that the mayor of Ottawa, back during the trucking convoy, had got his job as police chief in Ottawa as a political appointment out of Toronto because of who his father was. And it was a bad choice. And of course in my opinion, they just should have obeyed the law. Why would you ever in your imagination think that Canada has anything to do with the U.S. demanding COVID vaccination for entering the U.S.? It's got nothing to do with Canada. So the premise was wrong in the first place, as far as I'm concerned. And when they blocked the bridge down here, it didn't last very long. But here's an example. That bridge alone does 30% of the annual trade between Canada and the U.S., and they value it at a third of $1 billion per day. $323 million a day goes across that bridge. And to penalize everybody, the trucking companies that use the bridge, I think would be inefficient. But turning that oil tap off would certainly get the attention of the United States. When their oil, the price of the gasoline goes from $4 to $10 in a week, that would be the end of it. They would either be doing bombing runs on Ottawa, or they would open the damn bridge. And it's unfortunate you have to treat your neighbors like that. Now the ambassador from the U.S. explained in an interview that I saw on TV why they're blocking the bridge. And they said that Canada hasn't really paid for the bridge because Canada will get its money back from the tolls from the bridge. So therefore, in his warped economic mind, he said the analogy is like a mortgage on your house. The bank really doesn't own your house. It just lends you the money to buy it. And eventually it gets paid off and you own your house. And he's saying that the new bridge will impact the American company that owns the Ambassador Bridge, and therefore it's affecting an American, obviously Republican donor, having given Trump $1 million, and therefore it's anti-American as well. Now these clowns were all in favor of this when it was being built.
Yeah.
It's inexcusable.
Well, it's also part of the deal was the money would be paid back, and then after the money's paid back, the bridge enters into the second part of the deal, which means that it's jointly owned bridge. So then they share in the revenue thereafter. So they're misrepresenting the contract in the terms of the deal, which is typical Trump and Republicans lie, and distort the reality, and that's not appropriate. But there's a guy named Shri Thaindar, a Democratic congressional representative from Detroit. He goes on to state that Thaindar suggested that legal victories against other Trump administration policies are a potential sign that the president's delay of the bridge opening could be met with the same fate if there was a legal challenge on that. I don't think Carney has legally challenged it before the courts in the U.S. But further to that, Thaindar, or however you pronounce his name, goes on to state that maybe Canada should have part of the deal. He says, I would say let President Trump be in the first car that comes across the bridge. Corey said, another representative from Michigan, let him cut the ribbon, let him come across, that's the deal, and all the taxpayers would benefit from that, and he can take credit for all that as well as he should. You know what? I don't think so. You know, Thaindar said, Mr. Trump, open up the Gordie Howe Bridge. Mr. Trump, open up the bridge because Michigan needs it. The people of the United States need it. Michigan needs it for the commerce, for the jobs, for economy. That paralleled a speech by President Ronald Reagan, a famous Cold War challenge to former Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev. These people are political grandstanders, and there is no way that a potential pedophile, a convicted, adjudicated rapist, a felon, should ever be allowed to open a bridge and come into Canada. We do not like those values. We do not think the Republican Terrorist Party leader should be allowed to come into Canada. And there is no way that I, as a Canadian, would want a criminal or a criminal representative coming across any bridge that we paid for. That is against our principles, our morals, our ethics, and our values. If the U.S. citizens have those values, that's their shame to carry for eternity, not ours. And we should be banning Trump from dealing with anything that is on our borders, period. And coming across that bridge, no, absolutely not. That felon should stay in the U.S. where he belongs, and he can cause all the terror he wants in the U.S. And I'm getting tired of the terrorist parties, the U.S. conducting crimes around the world. So, no, you can't allow that felon to open the bridge. Sorry, not happening. I don't think that's appropriate. And what do you guys think? You just vanished. I guess we have those gremlins running the show again. Okay, well, so that's my take on it. I don't know what, maybe in the comments you think the world's biggest felon president should be allowed to cross and open the bridge to Canada. I don't like my tax dollars going to having that piece of crap walking on our bridge. When they own it after it's been paid for, maybe, but.
Well, if you look at the leverage you would have, the U.S. Reserve released oil over the last 2 months in order to export a lot of it. And they now have about 300 million barrels of crude left in their strategic reserve. Canada sends them over 3 million barrels per day. So you cut that 3 million a day off when you're providing 97% of their imports. All of a sudden, the strategic reserve gets burnt up, and the places where the U.S. is exporting their oil have to go without because the Americans will need it for their own requirements.
Well, I guarantee you within a day of turning taps off, the Gordie Howe Bridge is open and conducting business, because even even a dimwit would know you got to have that oil when your reserves aren't there anymore. And it would hurt the American people so immensely that even Trump couldn't, lie his way out of this one. So yeah, I like your idea there. What do you think, folks? Do you think Carney should force Alberta and the rest of the provinces to turn off the taps to the pipelines leaving the country? I vote yes. How about you?
You don't have to force them to do anything. It's because it crosses international borders.
Exactly.
The feds have the authority to say, okay, that's it. We're going to redirect this to China.
Yeah. Well, not only that, it's time to inspect the pipelines and make sure they're safe so we don't have any leaks. I mean, there was a pipeline here in Alberta that leaked for a whole year, and had they done more monitoring and inspections, that would have saved a lot of benzene leaking into the soil and costing harm to the cattle. Their fertility rate dropped in the area that the leak was, so there's impacts to the environment. So yes, we do need to maybe turn those taps off for pipeline inspection purposes. I guarantee you, Trump will have that bridge open quick. Take your gloves off, Carney. Let them know we're here. We got more than just elbows. We got the gloves off now.
Well, another fun fact is the strategic reserve in the U.S. can only release a maximum of 4.4 million barrels per day for up to 90 days. So they would be desperate pretty quickly.
Well, I think we should demand that the Epstein files be released too before we open up the pipelines. Turn those taps off and demand that the Republican Party, terrorist party of the U.S., unredact all those files of the Epstein, because it was human trafficking all around the world. And I would not be surprised to see that young girls from Canada were part of the Epstein files, and we should be demanding that. And, our pipelines do need inspection, so turn them off, and, Gordie Howe Bridge opens up when the Epstein files are released, and Trump quits extorting for the bridge.
The pipeline opens up.
Yeah, I think the people in the U.S. would be really fast to react if that oil was shut off. So make it happen, Carney. We in Canada have your back.
On that note.
Yep. Share, like.
Yeah.
Take care. And let us know what you think. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Subscribe to the channel. Give us a like, and please share the video. Don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.